So, Daniel, tell me a little bit about yourself. Your profile talks about being an explorer. Tell us about that.
Yes, so for about 15 years, I did solo wilderness expeditions. So I would go out by myself for 2, 3 weeks and write and photograph. Wilderness was more of my studio. That's where I went to connect to
Okay.
something that was bigger than me and to kind of find the solitude that would spark my creativity. So the writing that I did, these stories that I wrote, were not necessarily about nature itself, but it was more about the human journey using nature as a framework for personal transformation. So if you look at nature not as this separate entity, but rather as this world that is bigger than ours and has these rules and principles, and if you understand these rules and principles that have a strategy of evolving and transformation, then you find a certain comfort within our own journey. So nature is built on these fundamental laws of disruptions and tensions and rhythm and renewal because it constantly wants to evolve and transform itself. And we're no different.
Interesting.
Once you understand that, then you find that little, okay, so our lives transformation is the same and we have this journey of growth. And why is, yep.
And was it so I was just going to say, was it the photography or the writing that kind of came first for you? You were a photographer first time.
It was both. For me, they're all about. I guess I'm a storyteller first, and the writing and the images were all tools for me to tell the story. To tell that story. And for every
Yeah.
expedition, there would always be this moment where I could I saw this insight, and I had this moment of the light bulb went on, and I would feel like, okay, now I have a story, and I want to come back and I want to craft it. And the photos were more about capturing this journey of these landscapes or the relationship that I was having with my environment. And so, writer slash photographer, but ultimately, those are tools to tell a story.
And was it out in the wilderness where you discovered space, the big black stuff up there?
Now, space for me has always been up there, but never as a destination. Space was part of the stars, the night sky, this connection to this something that is bigger than us. We look up and then we see all these stars, and you can think of how little we are in this vastness of the universe. But like many others in 2020, and we had this realization that space was now becoming feasible. It was with Elon Musk and
Hmm.
in the technology. This was not just the realm of science fiction or space geeks that I often call, but this is our future. This is that next destination. And in that moment, I had this moment of realization, understanding that we were about to fulfill life's mission from life's perspective. Not that I want to give life a personality or an entity, but for this force that it's been evolving for the last 3.6 billion years, it has all this investment into becoming more complex. And ultimately, it wants to leave the Earth. It wants to connect on a universal level in the same way that it's been evolving and connecting on the planet because it wants to assure its survival. Like, why invest so much energy and time in developing itself so that it can be limited to one place? It wants to go to new places in the same way that it's been going to new places ever since it started on the earth. There was a bigger story to be told. There was a nature story to be told about space. And this is when I took my storytelling that I've been doing into the wilderness and directed it into space and wanting to tell the human story and the nature story of going to space.
And that's where it all connects back together in a nice round way. So, were you a sci-fi nerd when you were a kid, or not so much?
Yeah, I've always loved the idea of sci-fi. To say nerd, I'm not too sure. I was more, I guess, fascinated with the stories and sci-fi. Was I a Star Trek fan? No, but I always enjoyed going and see Star Wars or Star Trek. But for me, it wasn't. I wouldn't consider myself a sci-fi nerd other than just for the pure entertainment aspect of it.
And they're just great stories set in space, but they're the same great stories as we have on Earth as well.
Correct.
So, in terms of what you're doing at the moment and what you're getting involved in relating specifically to space, can you tell us a little bit more about the projects that you've got going on?
Yeah, so I got two big projects going on. One is with the future of space, which is creating this platform to try to elevate the dialogue of the space and non-space, to go beyond and to really connect all the dots over that essential human experience. So space is, yes, there's a science aspect, there's the technology, but beyond that, this is our future. This is where we're going, and there's a unifying factor to it, and we want to bring all the actors or actresses, or all the agents to the table, and try to find that commonality that unites us all. So the future of space is really about creating a conversation platform that goes beyond all these different segments, and we want to be that kind of, I don't know, the next TED or the next that event or that table where we come together to shape the global vision and the where we're going. So that's one aspect, and this is what I've been doing through my writing and
Hmm.
interviewing the inspiring leaders in their own fields and bringing them and really going beyond their own connection to space and hear about what is their human experience related to space. So that's one aspect. And then the other one is Space 110. And earlier or late last year, I got the opportunity. Some company reached out to me and said if I would be interested of going up on board Space Perspective at the end of 2024 and take photos of the Earth and create a story around that. And but what I did with that opportunity is that I took it and I transformed it a little bit, and I said, how about we don't make it about me going up to space, well, to the edge of space, but we make it about me taking you to the edge of space. So the idea that the company, the project that I started was that every year for the next 10 years, I will be taking a group of 10, 16-year-old young explorers on board Space Perspective and have them experience the overview effect and what it is to see the Earth. So imagine you're 16 years old and you get to experience that journey. And on board Space Perspective, 6 hours, 2 hours to go to slowly climb, and then you get to experience a sunrise and 2 hours at the apogee of the 100,000 ish, but it's high enough so you're just at the edge of space. You see the curvature of the Earth, you see the blackness of space, and you're 16 years old. So imagine coming down, and now you become an ambassador of what it is and to take the human experience to space. So that is going to start at the end of 2024. So I got Space 110 and I got a
Okay.
Future Space.
That'll be so interesting to see the journey and the difference of those 10 years. That'll be a fabulous documentary of just what's happening in the world of space over the 10 years from 24 to 34.
Correct. And
I wonder where we'll be at that point.
yeah, so for me, it was really this new destination. This I'm in love with the human story. I think that the human species embodies, yes, we are the worst and the best of nature. We can engineer its cruelty, but at the same time, we can elevate its beauty and what it offers. Now that space is a reality, it is really capturing the attention of the world and unifying this desire of what we can do and where we can be. And I've always told the human story through the nature perspective. And now that space is this reality, I was extremely, as an explorer, as someone who constantly is looking for these new frontiers to go and push the envelope of what is possible and going beyond the impossible. The space was definitely a big call. And I didn't have a real plan at the beginning when I got myself involved. I reached out to some of the people that I knew, and it connected me with the overview effect community. I started to find myself on Zoom with Frank White and some of the other members. And slowly and gradually, I start to see my place within that conversation and how I want to shape it for my own benefit.
Do you think that majority of people that you come across now, obviously you have a particular cohort of people that are involved in space, but for the ones that aren't directly involved in space, where do you feel the level of awareness of space and the opportunity really is? Do people get it?
I think that the vast majority of the people have trouble understanding what it represents and what it is because the focus has been more towards the obviously the rocket aspect of it, the astronaut aspect of it, the science and technology, and a lot of people are not aware of how much of their daily life is dependent on the satellite. But I think that the what has been missing in that conversation has been the human experience. Why are we going? What is beyond just the science and the technology? And we can go back into our own history, and there's so many times, and even just ourselves, like when we have our own children at one point leave the house and leave the nest, and it's not at the expense of the parents. It's to elevate and make the family stronger in wealth and knowledge. And that's pretty much it's the same principle but on a different scale. We're about to leave the planet, and it's not at the expense of the earth, but rather in support of it. We're going to get new knowledge, new technology, and all this is going to come at the support of the earth and the civilization or the people who choose to stay behind because of for many reasons. But there's always been in our history or in our story or in nature these moments where we feel like we need more space to expand, and at that moment we go everybody that lives in North America right now, every single person that is in North America is here because at some point someone left their home and migrated to a new land. Our ancestors got onto a boat, risk their lives, and then to create something new. It was a land of new opportunity. And we can go back from the origin of our species where like we started this little village or this little location and gradually we expanded. So we're doing what we're going to be doing is nothing different than what we've always been doing. It's just that the scale of it now is a little bit harder to understand because now we're going into beyond the earth. But is it
Yeah.
different than anything before? No, it's not different than when we were on the shores of somewhere and looked on the ocean and just wondered how we'd manage to get on the water and navigate. And this is what we want. This is what I want to bring people to is that we are continuing this human story that's been going on for hundreds of thousands of
It's a natural story, it's a natural progression continuing.
back in the 1900s, you had Tesla, you had Edison, and you had the Wright brothers. There were plenty of societal issues and diseases going everywhere, and there were problems to be taken care of. And you had Tesla and Edison trying to power the world, do things that people did not understand. And you had the Wright brothers trying to take over the sky. You had the people were writing in the newspaper how ridiculous and useless it was to do these things because there were other more pressing challenges. But the reality is that vision of the future that they created transformed the world and took care of some issues. So, like, we have to stop thinking that what space is trying to take away from what we have right now. And a lot of the not a lot of the conversation when that Salesforce commercial came out during the Super Bowl with Matthew McConaughey talking about how like we need to remember we have to refocus. We have to make sure that everybody's contributing. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, hold on 2 seconds, Matthew, you're an actor who's really doing nothing in life other than just portraying, telling a story. So you're not necessarily a doctor trying to change the world. So life is not about going into these single issues, dealing with it. You know, we have artists, we have musicians, we have philosophers, we have politicians, and all their goals is to bring a different perspective so that we can address the future. And space is part of that. equation, as part of that conversation. We need to bring that back to the table.
The relevance of the expenditure on space and that sort of thing. And only today I was talking with somebody that made a brilliant comment, saying that they're not putting the money on the rockets and blasting it to space. They're spending the money on Earth to do research and development and material science and medical experimentation that stays on Earth.
Yeah.
It just so happens the actual vehicles are quite expensive, but the vast majority of the money is deployed on a lot of the science that is developed has massive
Yeah.
Earth implications and applications.
And if you think back of the European migration, or the age of exploration on the ocean, it's as if like right now, like we're talking about boats. Oh my God, boats are amazing. Boats will be able to get you to these places. Better technology with the wind, better capacity of carrying cargo. Boats this and both that. But really, the boats were just the medium to get to these new places, so that you can, the economy and the civilization continues, and that's exactly what rockets are today, or satellites. They're just the tools. They're just a mobility. They're just a point of access. But what we're talking about is our society expanding, its boundaries, and everything that is about the human experience today will be on the moon or in Mars or in space, and the space station. And that is what we're talking about. We're talking about the future of our species, of the economy, of everything, of art, of our knowledge, but into these new frontiers.
You described with your project that you're going to 100,000 meters. Is that
No,
10
space perspective goes to about the stratosphere and at the edge of space. So 100,000 feet, I think it's something like,
feet?
yeah,
Right.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
30,000 or 30,000, 35,000 meters or something like that. So it's high enough and you don't lose gravity, but
Yeah.
it's high enough so you get the curvature of the Earth and you get the blackness of space.
Yeah. Do you think you'll ever venture into space?
Oh, if I have the opportunity, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if whether it's with Blue
And would you
Origin
do you,
or others, I will definitely go.
yeah, and would you live on? Would you actually go up, actually live on the moon, or live in a space station if that was available to you?
I would definitely. I
Yeah,
am married. I've told my wife that, given the opportunity, would we do it? And she said yes, to my surprise. But yeah, I do want to experience it. I do want to, because I think I love seeking these new experiences just to enrich the knowledge and my repertoire of experience of human experiences. Now, going to Mars, that would be maybe a bigger question because of the commitment at this moment. But I hypothetically and jokingly asked my wife that when we're about to kick the bucket, we're in the 90s or past 100, and we know that we don't have that many years to go. Would she be interested in taking a one way to get into, if it's available, but getting into on the spaceship and just basically knowing that we'll never come back and we'll pass away to the next journey, but as we watch these the universe that we've never seen. And again, to my surprise, she said yes.
So, if there was one particular thing that you wanted to convey to humanity about what you know now and what we should think about next, maybe in an evolutionary step, what would that be?
The underlying theme of all my stories, whether it's with Feel the Wild going into nature or now with the future of space as we go to space, is the human species is really not a bad species. We're actually an extremely good, successful species. Is life and evolution is a really messy process. There's a lot of disruptions and uncertainty in that process of growth and learning. Growth, whether it's a muscle cell or anything, always implies that you have to go outside of your comfort zone, pushing the boundaries, disrupting your environment. And every single species can and does that. The human species is no different. It's just that it is, like I said, evolution, learning is a messy process. But the success of the human species has always been to go beyond those places of limit. We push our boundaries and then we figure it out what works and what doesn't work. And then after that, we go beyond. Europe back in the 1500s was such a shamble, was so polluted. Everything was a disaster. And look where it is now. So it is, we're going through a transformation time. Transformation is always challenging by definition. You can think of, there's so metaphors that I can use, and it would take too much time, but we were in a relationship with the planet and with our society that worked for a time, and now it doesn't work. We don't know exactly how it's going to be, but we're having to try to figure it out, and these things that we took for granted now have to be reassessed. But the human species is not a bad species. We're great at making mistakes and figuring things out. So there's no point of trying to blame the past was trying to do the best in the same way that we're trying to do the best right now. So the
Mm.
objective should be trying to move forward with acquired wisdom rather than trying to go backward and looking to blame. My goal is always to inspire a certain sense, reframing the human story, and not dismissing the mistakes or the challenges that are done, but understanding that we have all the tools to figure a way forward and trying to build a better future that is for us right now, but also understanding that we'll have unintended consequences, and then at that time we will have also the tools to make it better. But we're always trying to do our best with the knowledge that we have at that time.
Inspiring. Daniel, thank you so much for your time. I look forward to speaking with you again sometime in the future.
Excellent. Looking forward. Thank you for reaching out.